Hey, my name is Jo Palmer, and I am the founder and managing director of Pointer Remote. We are a company that is passionate about supporting businesses and individuals from all over Australia, particularly in rural areas, to leverage remote work. We support businesses to grow and their teams and individuals to re-enter the workforce or to upskill in remote. We also work with communities themselves to support them to attract and retain population and to increase economic development in their areas. So today I'm really excited to be joined by, I don't know what I call you, Roberta. I feel like you're a bit of a guru in this space. I was actually trying to think of offline, who it was that connected us in the first place, but pre-pandemic, there was quite a small world of people globally that did stuff in this space, and then all of a sudden lots of people are doing it. Very, very pleased to have Roberta dialing in from Canada to chat with us today, which is very exciting. But look, Roberta, you do a far better job of introducing yourself. Do you want to give us the spiel, the bio, the what you do with yourself and the hats you wear? Go for it.
Sure. My necklace has just fallen off, so excuse me while I dig it out. Anyways, so, things that happen and we can blame everything in COVID for a period of time, but whatever. Anyways, as Jo said, I live in Canada. So I live in Western Canada in British Columbia in a spectacular place called Kelowna. So we are surrounded by mountains. So we've got skiing. We're on a lake that's 90 miles long. We are in the middle of wine country and golf courses. So I'm very privileged to live here with my husband. And we've got our son and his family live in Finland, and our daughter and her family live here in Kelowna. So when it comes to work, there's no easy answer. I wear a couple of hats. So one of the hats is I'm a business professor, and my focus is on human resources and management. And I've been doing that for, I think, 8 years. So before that, I was in industry in different leadership roles. I never officially was an HR professional, but I did HR stuff, which is fine by me because I actually got to choose the stuff of HR that I really enjoy doing. So at the same time, I also have my own business called SAM Consulting. And the focus of what I do there is working with, very focused on remote. So working with hybrid teams and organizations and individual leaders that are transitioning into a more hybrid context than the traditional co-located. So got my fingers in a few different pies. So life is interesting.
Love it. Well, I'd be really interested to hear, what the Canadian experience has been like over the last 12 months, but more so what your experience and what that's looked like with both things. So going to your college hat first. So you being a professor at, you've got a campus in Kelowna. Have they got campuses elsewhere?
We actually have 5 campuses up and down the Okanagan Valley. Yeah, but the main campus is here in Kelowna.
Yeah. So talk me through what, I suppose, what are some of the things that have had to happen with that hat on as far as transitioning in this sort of interesting period we've had over 12 months?
So transitioning is kind of a funny word to use here because it wasn't really a transition. It was stop this and you start this. So when we talk about transitioning, we generally imagine that we're building up to something and then we do a change and then that's what it is. So literally within the course of 1 week, we went from all of our classes being face-to-face to all of our classes being virtual. And so that was it. And so it's really interesting. So for some people, they had never been really engaged in a virtual community or virtual context before. So there was some stiff learning. For some of us, we had been kind of living a little bit in that world, and I had been living in the remote world for quite a few years prior to that. So I thought this is going to be easy. Well, actually transitioning and teaching online was easy, but what's not so easy is it is emotionally draining.
Mm.
So when you're, when you go to a meeting, you're in a meeting for an hour and then it's done, it's finished, and it's just a small group of people. Well, you're teaching online and you have to deliver it. You have to get students engaged. You have to watch the chat. You have to do your PowerPoint. You have to keep them engaged. And you're constantly thinking. And I think that the most surprising part for all of the professors was just this is tiring, and for the students, very tiring for the students. So um, the transition now has evolved to we're all quite comfortable with it. We know that education will change. It's never going to go back to the way it was, hopefully. We have students who are saying, I love the virtual, but I don't want to give up the face-to-face. So it really is mimicking what's happening in business. Some people say that everybody should go remote. I'm more halfway in the middle. I think it's great that people want to work co-located and people want to work remote. And I think a hybrid model is the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I think that's, excuse me, probably the perfect segue into then with your other hat and working with organisations who, talk me through, with the people that you were working with, were they already in a hybrid setup and were coming to you because it either wasn't working or it wasn't? So sorry, this is in like a pre-pandemic world.
Yeah.
Were the organisations coming to you that were already in that hybrid setup, or were they wanting to transition, as we were talking about actually being a process? And what does that look like now? Like what's the consulting side of things?
I think most of my work ahead before the pandemic was really working with people who are already working remote or getting into working remote, not necessarily organizations that were transitioned to becoming remote. A lot of conversations with people who were thinking about it, but again, not willing to pull the plug, not totally convinced that is this the right thing? What do we want to do here? So that part of my life was working fully remote with people who working fully remote, interacting on that level. And then before that, it was working 100% with teams and organizations before remote became a big deal, who were co-located. So it kind of went from one side of the spectrum to the other, and now we're joining in the middle and trying to figure that out. So businesses that we're working with now are ones that were fully co-located. They might have had one or two people working remote somewhere, but it wasn't because they hired remote workers. It was because they lived somewhere and it just worked for the business to have somebody there. So they called them remote workers, but it wasn't really in the same context. And so now it's businesses who are, okay, this is the new what's going to be happening. So how do we make this transition? What does it look like? How do we figure that out? We know that some of our people will continue to work remote. We know that some of our people, because of the nature of what they do, they actually need to be in the office. But we've got our teams are made up of half remote, half in the office. And how do we do that? So going back to those basics about how do we communicate? How do we collaborate? How do we do performance reviews? So all of those things that had become second nature. And I'm not saying that we ever did it really well when we were co-located. So I think that's one of the things we really need to be careful. We still had a long way to go with that. But now it's trying to bring all of this mishmash together, and it's all showing up in one team. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I just sort of think about, you made a really interesting point, just touched on it, that a lot of, I think people, and it's like with any crisis or a situation like this, that people pine for going back to normal when maybe all wasn't so fabulous in the first place, and that you weren't actually doing things that well in the first place. So are you finding that that some of your clients with the consulting side of things, are they coming to you where like, okay, this is a diabolical mess, what do we need to put in place? Like, are you going to that sort of extreme, or are you finding that people are like, okay, we've done this for a while now. These are the things that we have really worked for us. And these are the ones that we want to continue doing, but these are our pain points and that's what we want to sort of work on. Is there one or the other, or are you getting both that are coming in?
It's a mixture. It really is a mixture. And a lot of it has to do with the way an organization operated beforehand. I know one organization, their biggest fear is, how are we going to preserve our culture now that we're doing this? And so it's bringing different things up, because we know that location has nothing to do with culture. I mean, it's not, but I think that's the tangible thing that people can grab a hold of, and that's what they're afraid of, that things will change so much, we won't be us anymore. So some organizations are, they've gotten structures into place, and they just need, how do I tweak what we're doing? How do we lead better? And very much embracing and excited about it, all the way to an organization who totally not prepared, surprised. We really don't know what we're doing here. We don't have the technology to support it. So it's not, there's no one cookie cutter explanation or one cookie cutter model where all the businesses are saying, we're all like this, now we need to be like this. So the issues and the challenges, they could fit into buckets, but each business is unique to itself. And that's always the approach that we take when we're working with businesses. We don't go in with any canned anything. It's going in and really doing that discovery. Where are you at? What are your pain points? How can we bring you and help you to go through this? But what we are seeing is that a lot of businesses, they haven't gone down the road yet, so long range, what does this look like? I think there's a lot of questions out there that aren't being asked. And I think maybe people are afraid to ask the questions because they're not sure that they're going to like the answer. And so, there's a lot of things that we talk about it, that businesses talk about. Yeah, we're going to let people work from home, work from anywhere, come into the office and work from there. Well, who's paying for all this equipment to set offices up in 2 places? And is that really going to work? What are you willing to change permanently in long range? So we know it can work, but there's a whole lot that we still don't know, and a whole lot of learning and transitioning that still has to take place. So I think there's a lot of speculation going on still as to what things are going to look like and how they're going to settle down. I think we'll be in this transition, this change for quite a while yet. And so we need to hold on for the ride and keep our eyes and ears open and our hearts open.
Interesting. So are these businesses that you're working with, do you find, are they that sort of small to medium size businesses, or are you working with big corporates or organizations? With what sort of, say, headcount are you dealing with?
I would say they would be more in the medium-sized business range. So in Canada, when we talk about a small business, would be up to like 150 people. Medium would be up to 500 to 1,000 perhaps. And then, you've got your bigger corporations that are bigger than that. The majority of businesses in British Columbia, where I live, actually fit in the small to medium-sized business. And a lot of them are small businesses. So with them, you're dealing more with individual leaders because the companies are small. It's a small lead team. And those are actually the ones that are able to pivot the quickest. And they're able to reimagine what they're doing and to change their focus and to, move. By the time you get to the medium-sized business, there's enough things really embedded into what they do that there's a lot more change that needs to happen, like from policy, looking at strategy, looking at the mission and the vision and the values. Does that need to adapt whenever we're starting to change the way we do things? And and then the big organizations, that's a beast all unto themselves. So that's up for somebody else to deal with.
And I think they're probably feeling that themselves as well. They're like,
Oh, I'm sure.
a
I'm
slow
sure.
moving ship to
I know.
gear out of the way.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So, what sorts of things? So, if you think about your client list and you think about the ones that are either coming to you with the stuff that is working, or that you're working with them to get to a stage, like what are the good ones doing? What are you seeing when you're seeing an organization that you would say would get a gold star for running a hybrid team? What does that look like in your mind?
I think very much it's an organization that's really adapting a remote first mindset. And
Can I stop you there for a second? Can you, for people that
mhm.
haven't got a grasp on that, can you give us a little?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the person who has come up with the definition I like the best is Laurel Ferrer with Distribute Consulting. So Laurel says it's about adjusting your mindset. So when one person is remote, everyone is remote. And this is the mindset. And we need to build the workflows and communication structures to support equal access regardless of location. So if an organization, if they get that remote first mindset, it does not mean that they've become a distributed or remote organization. That's absolutely not what it is. But what it is allowing is the freedom for people to do that. And I mean, right now we're talking about the pandemic. In Kelowna, we can get fires where people don't come into work. Lots of places experience floods, so there's more natural disasters than just a pandemic. And businesses close down when stuff that happens. It's like whenever we were kids and you'd have a snow day. Well, businesses can't afford to have snow days. And so a remote first mindset, it really gives an organization the opportunity that if something keeps an employee from coming into work, I mean, apart from them being sick or something like that, the work keeps happening because the processes, the structures, everything is in place. And no matter who you are, where you're working, where you're located, you have the same access to all of the files, all of the communication, everything as somebody who's sitting in the office has. So when organizations and teams, they have that mindset, then it rolls out into how they communicate with each other around their communication policies, around how do we do training and development? How do we do performance management? Because rather than having this policy and this process for people who are co-located and this different one for people who are working somewhere else in the province and these people working somewhere else in the world, you have one way of doing something that it's remote first. And so that encompasses so much. And I think that's the step. That's where we want people to work towards. And that's will be successful. And getting to that point, the ones that are doing well are the ones who have definitely put the priority on their people. You know, what do our people need? How can we support them? And this is where you see leadership being totally flipped on its head. The role of the leader is to do everything they can to support their people. They're there to remove the barriers. They're there to ask the questions. What do you need from me in order for you to do your job well? And as a leader, I'll remove the barriers. You focus on what you need to do and let me take care of the rest for you so that you can be successful. In that, you see high levels of empathy coming. Real like expectations being what they should be. And then there's also that other part of also realizing that what we're experiencing right now, this is not true remote work. It's working from home. It's not working from anywhere. I don't like this. I mean, I love the ability to work remote. I don't like the ability to just be working from my home office. I miss going and working from the coffee shop. I miss going into a co-working space. I miss, if I want to go into my office at the college, going there and work. I miss that. I feel like I'm trapped. And so it's concerning If people take what they're experiencing now and saying, oh, that's what remote work is, and then they start building all their policies and their opinions based on this, because this is not it. So the ones who can get past that and realize that we're not setting it up so people can only work from home. That's not the idea. It's more, we want them to be able to work from anywhere without ever compromising the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there as far as that we've really tried to make a shift with how we've been describing that whole concept of that work from anywhere, work from anywhere, work from anywhere. It can be a co-working space, it can be the coffee shop, because you're right, that impacts completely on your legal documents that you're doing, your contracts, insurance and workers' compensation, and all of these different things.
Yeah.
So as far as like those that are doing that remote first thing, and I really love that was what you picked of being the key thing. Are you finding that some of the managers and leaders that you're dealing with, are you finding that organizations, while it's the job for the manager to support the team, are you finding that organizations are valuing and investing and putting time into supporting the managers, so that the managers or the owners of these small businesses themselves realizing that actually needs some capacity building in the management and the business owners? Like, is that something that you focus on as well as because it's a different way of doing things, it's a different way of managing?
It is, yeah. And when we're working with teams, it's the leaders that we're working with, but it's not necessarily the leaders always at the top. It's the leaders in that higher level that are concerned about the leaders of the teams and the leaders of their people. So I think we're still seeing that. Who do we need to build into the most, so that the worker bees, for lack of a better word, so that they're well supported? And that's what the focus is. So this next week, I'm speaking at a conference, and the focus of the conference is healthy leadership, and it's for a specific organization that's putting it on. And so they're realizing that there's a lot of the tools and stuff that we want people to have, but we need to focus on how do we keep our leaders healthy? And it's at every level of an organization. I think we'll eventually get there, but I think there's still an awful lot of trying to let's survive this. Let's take care of the people. The whole conversation around psychological health is huge. And so we're talking about, how are you taking care of your team? But we're not talking so much as a leader, how am I taking care of myself? And I know even at the college, when we switched over, the focus was, how do we make sure this is the best experience for the students? How do we make the learning accessible for them? How do we take care of people who maybe because of finances, they don't have the best equipment to be doing this? How do we make sure that, like, when we're online, we may be the only person that they're talking to because they're not allowed to leave their homes? So the focus was there. And it didn't take too long before we started realizing that the fatigue and the mental angst that as professors we were feeling is 6 months sooner in the year than we normally would be feeling that. And so, kudos to the dean of our department. He went to bat, and during the semester break, he got us an extra week and started school a week later. And it was for the sole reason of, we needed a week to shut off, not to be preparing for the next semester, but to get off our technology and just take a break. And I don't think leaders have a break. I think a lot of people are working longer hours and harder. They're not taking vacation because, hey, what do? Where do you go? So you stay in your work. And people who don't have anything else to do, well, I don't have any hobbies, so I might as well just keep working. So I think there's a lot of fallout that we're going to see, and a lot of building that will need to happen with leaders But the leaders need to be modeling how to be doing this, but the leaders also need to be cared for.
So interesting. So we're recording this in February 2021. And so we in the Southern Hemisphere have just come off the back of our summer break. And it's so interesting that normally, I know in North America, traditionally people do take a longer break and they'll take a good chunk of time, like 4 or 5 weeks, where they might be sort of dabbling at work, but they will switch off a lot more.
Yeah.
Australians don't seem to do that, but this summer, wow,
Oh, okay.
like everyone
Yeah.
checked out for January. Like
Really?
back at work, yeah, or if they were, everyone was pretty relaxed with replying to emails and those sorts of things. And I agree with you. I think that
Yeah.
for us, we were really lucky in that the summer break came when it did, whereas you guys have gone into now like a dark winter, which, like you've just said, people to sort of keep like,
we're hibernating.
yeah, like true Canadians hibernating in the winter.
I know.
Yeah, but it's really interesting, and that's interesting that you are seeing that that sort of unless you're making a conscious effort to support the management level, that that focus on the employees burnout and fatigue and stuff has been such a higher priority, but you forget that people to be managing that as well.
And you do, and you can't just walk past somebody's office and say, how are you doing? Did you have a good weekend? And that kind of out of sight, out of mind. So the intentionality that needs to be so prevalent, intentionally reaching out to people, intentionally asking the questions. In a school setting, you don't start the class, you don't walk in and start talking. You need to use some of your class to check in with your students. In business, whenever you're face to face, you don't come into the office, sit down and start working. You generally have a bit of that chit chat where you're talking to each other, you're checking in, you're seeing how people are doing. And we never really thought about that, but now we really need to think about it. Are we taking the time? And I think that's where the empathy really comes in. When you're having a team meeting online, are you building into the agenda like 10 minutes at the beginning where you're actually saying, how's it going? Let's just, no work talk. This is just people talk. What have you done? What have you learned? What have you read? I think one of the favorite questions is, what new shows have you found on Netflix? And that, our world is that, and the cooking shows and stuff like that. But it's important. It's being able to make those connections on a social level. And if we can keep working at that, then we're going to be able to collaborate and do business better. We're going to be able to be building those levels of trust. But we have to make time to do something that before it just happened by accident. And when you're working virtually, nothing happens by accident. And so when we talk about hybrid teams, you have part of the team who may be working together and they're having those interactions. And then you have the part of the team that's working virtually and they don't. And so again, the intentionality, how are you building those social connections so that you don't have 2 divided camps within your team? It's like with your kids. How do you make sure each child gets equal attention, that you got the same values, that you're there for all of them, they have the same opportunities? And it's intentionality. You have to be thinking through everything and having a plan and not leaving it up to, if it happens, it happens. Well, if it's not planned, chances are it won't happen.
I love that. I've never actually as explicitly heard it put like that, but nothing happens by accident in a remote setting. And that's so true, apart from not being able to like log in or your connection dropping out. But even that, like having the connection is a tough one. But me being like, for a perfect example this morning is I had a call that I'd been invited to. It was a Skype for business call, and I have a Skype account. I'd seen in my calendar that it was a Skype call and didn't think anything of it. And of course, I was then 5 minutes late because my normal Skype account doesn't let me log in. Skype for business account.
Of course.
Downloading Skype for business. But that, I think that you can put systems and processes around that. So realistically, I could have put aside 5 minutes every morning when I first sit at my desk, scan my meeting lists for the day, because I actually do that, and I actually put the
Yeah.
alarm on in my phone so I don't miss any of the calls.
Yeah.
But
Cool. Yeah.
actually taking that step further and saying, okay, is this a call? Is this a Zoom? Oh, is
Yeah.
this Skype for Business, which I don't have? I should explore that, and I should download before that. So I think that but you're right, being intentional and trying to remove any of those things that can come up and cause dramas. I feel like I'm probably a little bit slow on the uptake. I'm sure everyone else has worked that out over the last 12 months, and you'd think that I would have to do that.
Yeah, you know something? I don't think so, because the rest of life is still happening around us as well. So you're doing this new thing, and I feel for people who are doing it where you might have both partners working from home and you have kids being homeschooled, and everybody is supposed to get their work done. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
This is another reason why you need to relocate. We were talking offline about relocating to Australia. See, kids have been back at school for a good while now. We haven't been doing homeschooling for a good long time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, ours went back in September. And but there are some places in Canada where kids are at home, and some parents are choosing for safety that they are keeping their kids at home. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
That was a fun hurdle for people to get over.
Yeah, I feel like everyone sort of put that in the let's not speak of this time again.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to sort of bring you back again to, and it doesn't even have to be the ones that are doing a semi-good job or those that are feeling like they're in a diabolical mess. But what are some of the sort of tips and the strategies and things that you're giving to businesses? Like obviously that remote work, you said that the remote first mentality and stuff that a business is sort of that's a process, and that's something that you actually need to think about and actively instigate and instill into the culture and the whole function of an organization. But do you have any I suppose tips for, I know that a quick win, that sounds a bit crass asking for quick wins and things, but do you have any of those sorts of, I guess, tips for businesses that are feeling like they're drowning a little bit with this transition to like a hybrid model, about things that are some maybe priority areas rather than quick wins? Like, do you think that there is almost like a ladder sort of that you should be working your way through? Like, is there sort of priorities that you think that you would recommend for businesses to sort of try and put into place first?
I think the greatest thing that businesses could do is hit pause and just take a breath and evaluate where they are. One of the things that I'm doing a lot of reading on right now is adaptive leadership. And it's getting your head around that. I mean, what is happening now is we're dealing with change management that's not ending. And so if you look at this as change management that is actually continuous change that really happens all the time in organizations, but we think of change management in the context of, this is something we're going to change, so we'll work on that one thing and then we'll move to the next thing. So we're in a continuous change. But having that mindset of sitting back and looking and realizing that we can't put quick fixes on anything. The authors around this adaptive mindset saying, we can't approach everything as though it's a technical problem, that if you do this, that fixes this. If you do this, it fixes this. This calls more for iteration, where we need to be thinking it through. And again, when you're talking to leaders, letting them know that, talk to your people, bring them in, talk about it, take the time to really think it through, and know that we may work on this now and find some kind of a solution, but don't be married to it. You may need to be adapting and then adapting and then adapting. So it's almost like we need to let go of the shore and stop thinking about we've always done it this way, or this is the format that we're always comfortable with, and start kind of cutting those ties. But don't do it alone, like do it collectively. Think it through, talk it through, and as much as possible, don't make any quick decisions. Take the time to think through, why are we doing what we're doing? Another approach that I love is the whole thing of appreciative inquiry. And appreciative inquiry takes the time to step back and say, what are we doing well? What are our strengths? As a business, what are we good at? What is it that we want to make sure that we don't lose, that we hold on to that, but we may be looking at it and approaching it from a different perspective. So it's bringing people together, not looking for quick fixes, although we always want that. And there will be technical things. We can all learn how to use different collaboration tools. I mean, those are the quick fixes. But if we just focus on that and we don't focus on the why behind why we're doing it, and we lose sight of the people at the crux and the center of it, I think that's when we run into problems. But we need to adapt. There's no way around it.
Interesting. So how I'm reading this is I'm hearing every organization should stop customers, stop their students. Everyone deserves a week off to recalibrate.
Wouldn't that a week off? Hey, let's go for a month.
Yeah. Why not? Why not? Like let's think big. Let's think big with these.
I know. Yeah, it's and there is, and and all joking aside, it would be wonderful if there were quick fixes, but there's not. And if we want to preserve our people, if we want to preserve our businesses, if we want to really flourish and not just kind of bracket this time and say, oh, if this was finally over, then we can get back to work again and get back to doing what we want to do. We're not going to get back to that. And so we need to, it's kind of like the wake-up call. What do we need to do? Let's think about it. Let's really process it. And let's ask questions that we may be afraid to ask because we may be afraid of the answers. But if we don't ask those tough questions, we are going to be in trouble.
Interesting. And I guess another thing, just sort of listening to you talking about checking in on your teams and including your team in the decision making and those sorts of things. I guess for people that are employees watching this, listening to this, is check in on your boss, check in on your manager.
Well, something, and it's like I'll send an email to our dean and just ask him, how are you doing? To the chair of our department, how are things going? And so I need to take care of myself. I need to take care of those I'm supporting, but we're all working together. And it's at times like this where you kind of need to put hierarchy aside and realize that we're all people and we need to be supporting each other. And it's not just during the pandemic. Like those are patterns of behavior that should carry on throughout. It's people working with people. Everybody's got their different jobs. And I know people have got bosses, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be caring for the people who are leading you. I mean, we need to lead up. We need to support going up as well. So.
Oh, I think that I have to pull up there because that's a beautiful one to end on. Roberta, I am absolutely so thrilled that you could join us today. I'm really, really appreciative of your time and your insight and your wealth of knowledge in this area. Where can people find you online or get in touch or follow along with things that you're up to? Where do you spend most of your time?
You can always find me on LinkedIn. So just search for Roberta Sawatzky on LinkedIn. I've got my website is Sam, so SAM Sam is remote. And so it's SAMIS remote.com. And we're starting to rework that. So you'll see it going under construction soon. And welcome to email me at any time. And it's Roberta at samisremote.com. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your generosity with insight, and I really, really appreciate your time.
My pleasure, for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.